guys, good morning. Welcome to the Complete with Purdeep Show. My name is Purdeep Sangha. I am your host for today. If you're watching this for the first time, if you're a gentleman who is a family-oriented man, you're a career guy, you're a professional, you're an entrepreneur, you're a CEO or executive, you definitely want to pay attention to this show and watch, because we're all about having complete victory in life, which means that you have everything that you want and more, having the awesome relationship, having the business, the wealth, the success, being that awesome father that you want to be, but having every aspect of life that you deserve to have as a man. I know right now there's a lot of guys out there that are challenged with the events that have been happening this year with COVID, some may even with the political divide, but you know, we're here to help and we're here to support each other as men, and that's why this show is so important. So I first ask that you please like and share this show with your network, because the more people we can reach, the better. Again, we have a lot of people out there that are struggling and they need the help. So thank you so much. Super excited today because we're going to be bringing on an awesome guest. He's an entrepreneur, he's a father, he's a husband. He's got a cool, you could say, feeling to him. He's a pretty chill guy. We had a great conversation backstage. And so we'll bring him on in a few minutes here. And so today's theme, I really want to talk, obviously I talk about the 13 C's of being the complete man. And today's C is character. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening from a global perspective, because character for me is so important. It's something that my grandfather taught me when I was young. And he was in the Indian Army for 30 plus years, was raised by the British as well, but it was very much about character. What is a man's character? Things like your word is your bond. Things also like, so that's my dad, my uncle, and I'm going to talk about that and why that story is, or that picture is very important to me in just a minute here. But my grandfather taught me that character is so important, because as a man, people can take away your money. People can take away your home, because he experienced it. People can even take away your family members. They can take the shirt off your back, but the one thing they can't take away from you is your values and your principles, and ultimately your character as a man. And I think that's something that is so important in today's society, and why this movement, it's called No Farmers, No Food. You might have heard of what's happening in India right now, but there is a huge, you could say, a peaceful protest happening in India when it comes to the farmers, because the Indian government passed a number of new regulations without consulting the community. And 60% of the people in India are farmers or work on farms. So we're talking about hundreds of millions of people that are being impacted by these changes in regulations. And I don't like to get involved in another country's political changes or regulations, but this is particularly important to me because I grew up as a farmer. And I know how hard it is for farmers to grow the food and feed the entire world. And right now we have a huge population in India that is at risk of being taken over by private or larger corporations. So the changes have a massive impact on the everyday small farmer. I just encourage you to do some research and look it up, because the one thing that's coming out of there and kind of relates to this show is character, because a lot of people have stood up. We're talking about men of all ages, children to seniors, women, from all ages, that have all come together to support this movement, this peaceful protest, to make sure that the government understands that they just can't arbitrarily change rules that can impact hundreds of millions of people's lives. And again, it's about standing up for what you believe in. These guys have literally camped out in front of New Delhi, which is the capital of India, and they are not prepared to move. They have literally put up shop. They're feeding the general population as well. It's not just about them. They realize that it's about the entire population of India. But again, Elio, if you can bring up that picture again, this is important, because that is my dad on the left, and that is my uncle on the right. My dad he immigrated here from India in the early 70s, and he was a farmer. And that's all he knew how to do. And he became a farmer in Canada and bought his own orchard. And that's our orchard right there. That's apples in the background. And I grew up in an orchard. My parents used to put me in an apple bin, my brother and I in an apple bin, as they would be working. So I know the struggles that farmers face, and they face those struggles here in Canada in a society that's not considered a third world. Imagine what the farmers in India are feeling. On the right, that is also my uncle, my dad's brother-in-law, that came from India to visit my dad for the very first time in 2018. And why this moment is so special for me is because I live on almost the other side of the country. And it was a very busy time, but my uncle and my aunt came to visit my dad for the first time to Canada. That was their first visit. And my family and I did a surprise visit because I wanted to see my aunt and uncle because they are in their late 70s. And I thought that would be maybe perhaps the last time I would ever see them. And I didn't want to give up that moment. But here's the irony of that. When I went to visit my dad, or visit my aunt and uncle who were staying with my dad, that was the last time I actually saw my dad. And because a couple months after that, who would have known, he's the one that suddenly passed away from a heart attack. So that picture is very special for me because that was the last moment that I really got to see my dad. And here are two farmers, one's no longer around, but one is still in India farming, and standing up for the cause of what you should believe in. Again, going back to character, which is important. And so if you haven't gotten a copy of my new book, The Complete Man, please do. You can go to completemanbook.com because we've gotten such awesome feedback from the readers out there. I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for your reviews on Amazon. It's really, really important for us to stand up as men and live complete lives. And this book is all about how you can do that, the real strategies and tactics that I've learned throughout the years in my personal experience and my coaching successful men. And I highly encourage you to get that and share that with your network, because again, more people that can get a hold of this and read the tactics and the strategies. This isn't a woo-woo book. I want to make this very clear. This is not about a motivational book. It's everything aside from that. It's about real strategies and tactics to get that success that you want in life. Be that best father, be that best husband that you want to be. So we're going to bring this awesome guest on, but I also want to give you a sneak peek into our backstage producer. This guy is awesome. He is fabulous. His name is Elio. He's the main man there. There you go. You can see him.
Yay! Are you ready? Are you ready for what I have for you this morning, Purdeep? Let me show you what I have for you. 1, 2, here we go. Yeah, I'm telling you, I am better than good, better than most, and sometimes I am better than that. I'm super excited about our guest today.
Yeah, thanks, man. So for those of you guys who don't know much about Elio is a producer. He produces awesome shows like this. He is wicked. He's musically inclined, as you can tell. This guy is a professional at what he does. He's going to be backstage, making sure that the show is somewhat entertaining, because it's a Thursday morning and we want to get you guys up and running and have an awesome day. So with that, this gentleman, I had a great conversation with him prior to coming, obviously up front here on Backstage. This gentleman is not only an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur, he's a husband, he's a father, and just a cool dude. I just love chatting with him. So Collin, welcome to the show. He's also the founder of New Scooters for Less, which is a really cool business. I love scooters myself. So thanks for joining us today.
Hey man, thanks for having me. The drum roll from Elio, I love it. Thanks, brother.
I promise a drum roll for you, my friend.
I feel like I need to take you everywhere with me, Elio. I always love that. I like to get the energy going, because I'm a guy who just loves to have that flow. It's the flow.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we're gonna get Elio to start playing some rock here one day. Get him on the piano, on the guitar. But thanks for joining us, Collin. I know you're a busy guy. You got a business. You're an entrepreneur. You're running the shop. So I just want to get your take. You know what? You started this business, from my understanding, in 2004, correct?
Yeah, long time. I mean, it makes me feel so old now, man.
Time flies, doesn't it?
It does.
So can you tell me how it started? How did you get into that? What were you doing right before that?
Yeah, sure. So I, as a child, I grew up in, as a military kid, right? My dad was in the Air Force, bounced around all over the place. The longest I'd ever lived in one place was like 3 years. You know, we were always bouncing around every 2 to 3 years. And so when I got to Gainesville, Florida, it was for one reason. It was to go to the University of Florida, which was the only school that I ever applied to. And I got in, thankfully. And it was the only school I wanted to go to. And got in. And so my 4 years at the University of Florida from 2000 to 2004, that was the longest I'd ever lived in one place. So that instantly made it like home for me. I felt like, hey, like I've fallen in love with this community. But the thing that really got me into the business was I was doing what you were supposed to do as a college student, right? I was going to my classes, going to Career Showcase. They had this event called Career Showcase, and it's great for a lot of students. You know, you're going into the O'Connell Center, which is, our basketball center here, and you are going around from recruiter to recruiter. You're all dressed up in your suit and tie, got your resume in hand, and walking around, you're shaking hands with these recruiters. And, one of them asked me a question, and he said, "So Collin, why do you want to work for our company?" And I was like, I don't. I didn't say that, of course, but I'm like thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, like I really don't. And from that moment, and like going back and leaving that event and then going to and from class, it was just light bulbs, man. Light bulbs started going off. I was sitting at a bus stop waiting for this bus to pick me up, to take me to class, like I had been for the last 3.5 years. And then all of a sudden this bus drives by again with these words across the top that say full bus. And, man, I was just like, dude, this has been happening for 3.5 years. Is that like, if I'm going through this problem, like if I'm having this problem, who else is having this problem? And not only that, but like on campus, if you were trying to drive to campus, you were driving around in circles looking for a parking spot, right? And never finding one. And, I saw that the University of Florida was building, buildings on the only property that they had, which was parking lots. And so these things started sending off these light bulbs, and I'm like, you know what, maybe I could do something about this. And truthfully, I jumped headfirst into something I knew zero about. And so that's kind of where it's led us today. We just focused on this problem of helping college students get to and from class without having to wait for the bus or deal with campus parking. And so, it's been a really cool journey to see this entire university completely transform. I mean, scooter parking was barely in existence in 2004. Today, it's everywhere. And the scooter parking is like so full, and they've got these, massive scooter parking lots, and it's been a really neat thing to see, and just see what can happen when you pull a team of people together to accomplish a mission,
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's funny you say that, because it's kind of like the Uber parking stalls now that they've had at airports. I was amazed. I can't remember which airport it was. I was like, holy crow, this Uber parking lot is just massive. It's just
right.
Or to pick up the area, I should say, not necessarily parking lot, but it goes to your business. So let's get into scooters a little bit.
Okay.
We used to rent scooters all the time when we were kids, just because it was just fun to drive around. So why scooters?
Only because it was the solution to a problem. Like a lot of people always ask me, so Collin, like, did you grow up in a dealership? Were you passionate about cycling and motorcycles and scooters? And I mean, I had never been on a scooter until I got to college, and it wasn't even my scooter. I didn't have a scooter like when I was in school, and the number of decals that were sold in 2004 were like 500 in a year. And that was for it was like motorcycle and scooter parking. It's like most of those are probably motorcycles. Well, like in 2017, which was the last time I actually saw a statistic on this, it was like 6,800 decals were sold. And I mean, like the University of Florida makes well over $1 million just on scooter parking now. So wow. It's been crazy to see it. But the only reason it was scooters was because it was the solution to a problem. You can have it, downstairs in your parking lot. You can walk down, wake up last minute, walk downstairs, jump on your scooter, go straight to the university. And there's so many scooter parking places that you can park outside of many classrooms and be within very short walking distance to your class. So it was just a time saver, and it was the solution to the problem.
So this is interesting. Now we're getting a little bit into the business side.
Yeah.
And so I'm up here in Canada.
Okay.
And I don't see a lot of, and I'm just going to speak on my personal experience, and I haven't taken a look at the stats or the research. I haven't seen a lot of smart cars around. Maybe not as many as I probably should, or maybe I'm just completely ignoring them. But have scooters kind of replaced the smart car? Or are they like, because I thought there was this movement, I can't remember how long ago, but everybody's like, smart cars are going to take over. But I haven't seen that.
No, I mean, I think it's just, I don't know, like I have a hard time really comparing us to like the car industry, because it's just so different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we solve a very particular problem. I would say that most people who have scooters also have cars. And like from the smart car standpoint, you're right. Like I haven't seen that take off. I don't know I don't even know if like the purpose of those was really to keep it tight and small. Right. Yeah. And at least my perspective is like in the United States, at least in a place like Gainesville, Florida, we don't have that critical of a parking problem. I think to be able to fit in tight spaces, whether you're in like a place like New York City or a major metropolitan area where you need to fit those vehicles in, maybe. I mean, our parking issue is specifically with campus, right? With like getting to class. So
yeah. So you got that specific college student, which we were also talking about backstage. Is this has been an interesting year for you?
Yeah, it's definitely been one for the books for sure.
So we, obviously we talked about the events of COVID, how this has impacted. There's millions of people without jobs. There's a lot of guys out there that have or had businesses and have had to let go of the businesses or in the process of saying, I got to shut my business down in the next couple of years. There's just no way I can continue to operate this way. You were saying that it's been a tough year for you guys because of the college side. Can you go into that and how you've adapted to that?
Yeah, for sure. So look, for anybody who's listening, like 95% of our business is college students, right? Like I said, we went to solve this very specific problem, which was for college students. Now, of course, we sell scooters to other people too. And that doesn't mean we won't sell to to somebody else who's not a college student, of course, but like that was our primary demographic. That's why we got into the business, right? So when all of this stuff with COVID started happening, we kind of knew right away, right? Because the university was like right in the middle of March. They said, hey, we're going to, let's flatten the curve. We're going to send the students home. You guys like 2 weeks off. Like, so it was like this mindset of, all right, 2 weeks. And I just knew in my gut that there was no way. I'm like, they're going to close the school and it's going to be closed for the rest of the summer. And so that was mid-March. But what we did to adapt it like immediately, I was like, okay, we got to go into storage mode. So one of the services that we offer is like, we run like a scooter hotel, because college students, they leave, right? They're leaving right now for the holiday break. They leave for the entire summer if they're not going to school. So we actually have a warehouse where we will just store them, and we charge for this service. So that way it's kept inside, it's, protected from theft, protected from the weather. And you come back, right in August, September, when school's starting, and you pick your scooter up. Well, we just kind of jumped into storage mode right away. It was like, okay, we called it, COVID storage, coronavirus storage, 2 weeks, $50, bring your scooter in. We'll just hold it during this time. And then of course, what happened was like, none of those people came back, and then they just started extending their storage. So that was our initial revenue stream. That kind of got us through to the point where we were able to get the PPP money. Look, I'll be super transparent with you. Like, I'm not sure if we would have made it if we hadn't gotten the PPP money that the government was going out. That gave us a runway to make the pivots and the adaptations that were necessary to get to where we're at today, right? And so some of the things that I started thinking about when all of this started happening, I'm looking at China, I'm looking at Italy, like all the scooters come from overseas. We sell Vespa, they're Italian made scooters. So I'm like, okay, if they're not making scooters because they're all at home, like how's the supply chain going to be disrupted long term? So I instantly went into a mindset of, okay, we might have to start buying back all of the scooters here in Gainesville. And did I lose it? Oh no, I'm still sorry, like froze up. We might have to buy back all the scooters in Gainesville, and that might have to be the revenue stream. So I was looking at the supply chain, and then also thinking, hey, we might not be able to have people come into our dealership to physically purchase in person. If that's the case, what is the new reality? And so for me, we instantly went into trying to create a virtual showroom. We had, we started making little videos of all the scooter models really close up to show the features. And then we took our entire sales process online, right? Like if you wanted to buy a scooter, we could do all the paperwork via DocuSign. We can handle the transaction exactly like this, via video or just via email, like whatever. We don't have to meet in person. And that was something that we hadn't done before. We hadn't really ever had that process. It's always been a very in-person experience. So those are some of the big changes that we made, and the PPP gave us the ability to make those changes. And then we got to a place where, okay, like we're pre-selling scooters, and then we just started focusing on, in August, back to school, just hoping that everybody was going to come back. Thankfully students did come back to Gainesville. But it wasn't, we didn't have the year that we had 2 years ago. You know what I mean? It's definitely been a challenging year. And I love that the theme of today's show is character. Because just like, these are the moments, right? These are the times that really define our character as leaders. It's like, having the grit and the perseverance to get through situations exactly like this one. That's what it's all about. And so that's what I hold on to,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, it's easy to have a business in good times, which we've had a good run since 2009, 2010. But now this is where we're testing the true grit, like you said, of entrepreneurs. Do they have the fortitude to really get through? And this isn't about, because some people just genuinely just don't have any avenues. They just cannot figure out a way, but there is always a way. There is always a way to find or pivot or do something differently. Now is not the time to give up, because we are getting through this, and we will go into the upswing of things here very soon. Hopefully this coming year, let's see how things go with this vaccine and whether people are taking it or not taking it, whether it's safe or not. But long story short, we're going to have to come out of this soon. What are you looking at now? So 2020 was a tough year for a lot of businesses. If 2021 goes like this, maybe let's just say it's going the same way, what are you thinking of next? Do you have a plan? Do you have okay, you know what, if this happens, if I see these signs, I'm going to start moving this direction? Have you started thinking a couple of years out?
Yeah, I think, definitely looking, I would just say it's like expanding on these pivots that we have put in place. So we created a consignment program, like I said, with the used scooters and stuff. We created this great consignment program. We even created a website that we've kind of used in the past for other purposes. It's called buymyscooter.com. And we kind of made this a place for our used and consignment scooters, right? And so I think just diving deeper into that and promoting more of those services will allow us to kind of continue on the path that we're on, continue to take things more digitally and virtually, and just dive deeper into the things that we started because of COVID, right? I think what's so great about times like these, and this is what I try to encourage when I talk to other business owners, I try to encourage them with this. It's like, okay, look, if you can create the pivots necessary to get through these tough times, right? What happens when everything goes back to normal? Or, what happens when all these college students are back on campus again, right? We're going to have our revenue stream that we've had for years, right? We're going to have all that business, but then we're going to have this additional revenue that came from these changes and these pivots that we made. And so we should, theoretically, if we've done everything correctly in terms of preparation, make more money and be a better business because of it. And so that's what it is for me. And I think that's the case with a lot of businesses. I think it's just, making the changes necessary to get to that point. And then, at some point things are going to get a lot better. I don't think it's going to be an overnight process. I think everybody kind of thought it would be a little bit, I don't know. I mean, I'll ask you this. Did you think that in December 2020, we would be still dealing with this thing?
I actually kind of did. Yeah. And just like any infectious disease cycle, it's typically a couple of years, 2 to 3 years. And I never did as much research into this kind of stuff as I've done this year, but I think it just depends on, we could still be in the same position a year from now. If I think people don't really take this as seriously as it is, because a disease is a disease. Let's see what this vaccine does. But long story short, I'm always hopeful we'll come out of this strong. But to answer your question, I kind of did. But it's a good thing because I'm a business strategist. That's kind of what I do, and I personally believe that this has caused people to actually be more diligent entrepreneurs and business owners. Like, this is now saying, okay, we have to be more responsible with the money that we spend, our strategies. We got to be more competitive. We can't just be going with the flow, because that's just not. We got to make faster progress in our business to stay healthy. And this is just, I think, a wake up call for a lot of business owners to say, okay, this isn't just about the normal everyday stuff. I think a lot of businesses like yours are understanding that you got to be able to change faster now. You got to be able to, what happens with the next wave, whether it's COVID or something else, you're going to have to start shifting a lot faster. That means you have to have people on your team who are more forward thinking, people that are adaptive to change, people that can be creative, having some structure, processes, technology. I think this is just a win-win overall. Just like everything else, we will get through this. We will be stronger.
Right.
I'm personally, I am hoping from a society perspective that we come out a lot stronger. That's my main big thing, because we've had a political divide in the US, for example. We've had this COVID where people are socially isolated, and we're seeing that it's impacting people from a mental health perspective. Man, I'm getting tired of sitting and not being able to see my family and go to places and go to a bar for a drink and just hang out and talk to someone I don't know, right? Like that's like taboo right now. A lot of the bars aren't even open here in Canada. So we've actually gone back a few stages where we've shut down a few things. Like our numbers are nowhere near what's in the States, not even close. But I think here people are just very diligent, and they're like, okay, we just don't want to take that chance. So they've shut a lot of things down. And I feel for the business owners.
Yeah. I like what you're saying there, because like this year has definitely been an awakening. You know what I mean? Like here, I don't want to say like I'm ashamed, but like as an entrepreneur, and you get into entrepreneurship because you don't really want to be reliant on other people. You're becoming an entrepreneur because you want to be self-made. You want to be able to have the freedom to work on the projects and stuff that you want to work on. And when I had to like rely on this PPP, for example, to help get through this, I'm like, dude, I don't want to rely on the government for anything. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's been like an awakening. It's like, okay, I'm going to be better prepared for this next time. Like, of course, everybody's like, well, Collin, you couldn't have predicted a pandemic. Like, I get that, but we should still have some sort of emergency fund. We have business liabilities. I got my vision board, like right here above my desk. I got these like, business liabilities, some debt and some things. And like instantly I'm like, man, what, like why? I've become used to making payments on debt. This is stupid, and I don't even know if I would have like had that much of an awakening if it hadn't been for something like this pandemic. You know what I mean? So now it's like, okay, I'm gonna be a much better entrepreneur because of this. I'm gonna have a massive reserve fund in the future. Like that's a goal, right? Gonna have a massive reserve fund, not gonna have any liability. Definitely don't ever want to have to rely on the government. Like that's the mindset, right? And then from a personal standpoint, you know, like I genuinely believe, and this is what I've been trying to encourage other entrepreneurs with, is like, look, I genuinely believe that in 2030, I'm going to be looking back to 2020 and I'm going to say, that was the best year that ever happened to me. That's the best year of my life because of this revelation and this awakening that I've had. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I love it. I just love the attitude, because I think if more guys pick up on that attitude, they're going to come out a lot stronger. I couldn't have, you know, I 110% fully believe in what you say, because this, we will get through. We will make it through. As I said before, you will learn so much from this. That's the most important thing. And I think this is one thing that my grandfather taught me. You know, every adversity, there's a learning from it. There's something that we can take from it and learn and become better as a man. This isn't just about being an entrepreneur, right? You talked about grit. You talked about character. We're going to have so much of that coming out of this, that the whole purpose of the concept of being the complete man is to be able to feel complete regardless of what the external situations are. So if crap is hitting the fan, we got COVID out there, or you know, the economy's crashing, whatever it is, we still feel like we are the complete man. We still feel like we can take care of our families. We still feel like we're there, we're solid. And because I'm gonna pivot here and say, you're a husband as well. You're a father. You have 2 boys. What was it like at that moment that you started to say, okay, this is going to change for my business? Were you afraid for your family at all? Were you thinking, okay, how does this impact them?
You know, strangely, I wasn't. And I think that just comes from a standpoint of, yeah, I'm able to kind of take a larger look, like a bigger perspective. I know that if I had to close this business tomorrow, everything's gone, dude, like I'm going to be able to get another job. I'm going to be able, and I probably won't ever get another job. I'd probably just start another business, right? Because that's what entrepreneurs do. But I feel like I'm extremely employable. I feel like
I like that, Collin.
What's that?
I like that. Extremely employable.
Like I feel like I could, you know, put a post on Facebook saying I'm available for hire, and I don't mean this in like a, you know, it sounds kind of conceited now that I'm saying it, but I just, you know what I mean. I feel like because of my experience and because of the knowledge that I've gained over 17 years of being an entrepreneur, I've done it all. And so I can, you know, throw me into any position, I think I'd be okay. And really be able to help a lot of companies if I had to get a job. So I think there was confidence in that. And knowing that like, I'm going to be okay, long-term. And I think a lot of that, you know, to take it a step further, it's just my faith, man. Like, I'm a believer. I like, you know, I just know that, again, and I think that's what contributes to my mindset of that. I know 2020 is going to be the best year ever, because I just know that God's got it. You know?
Yeah. And faith goes a long way.
And you can definitely get lost in the weeds. You know, you can definitely forget that at times. But yeah, I mean, you know, the best thing when it comes to my relationship with my wife, for example, you know, I feel like we were more tuned into each other because of it. Right there, you have to look at the benefits. Like we were having more communication, more conversations around it. We were talking about our own personal debt, you know, well, guess what? December 2020, we have no personal debt. And I don't know if that would have been the case if it hadn't been for COVID, because we like made the mental decision of, dude, we're going to go get rid of this and we're going to go hard. And so we did. And then you look at, I look at March and April, do some of the best things that happened where we had more family meals during that time with each other, because that's all we had was each other. There was no going out with friends. There was no going out to soccer practice. There was no, like, none of that existed, right? Everybody had to stay at home. And so here we are at home, we're spending, quality time with each other, having meals with each other. We had more family meals in 2 months than we had in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so those are the things that I'm going to be grateful for. I think you just have to take that bird's eye view, step back and say, this is what's really important. And I'm grateful for those moments. I'll be grateful to 2020 and to COVID for those memories and those meals with my family,
Mm-hmm. There's 3 things that really stand out for me there. Well, the first one is when you talked about the faith aspect. Faith is important, whether it's a religious faith or a spiritual faith or whatever it is, but having that belief that there's something better on the other side is important. We all need to have that in men. And the second thing that popped up is when you talked about, your belief in yourself, your self-confidence, because that comes back to character. And what ends up happening for a lot of guys is they tie their character, their identity to their business success or their career success. And that's great when things are going well, but it's a challenge and it becomes very dangerous when things aren't going well. And men they can lose themselves real fast if they tie themselves to what they do versus who they are. And this is for you out there listening. I know there's a lot of guys out there very successful, but any one of us can lose our job. Any one of us can lose our business. It's who you are that it matters the most. And I love the point that you talked about with your wife, because I think this is, again, so important. I know because of the work that I do with men, 8 out of 10 men struggle in their relationships. They're struggling. And not just, I've mentioned this before, not just that they're having a tough time, either the wife or themselves, have one foot out the door, right? They just want to leave because it's not the relationship they want. And so I'm a firm believer that your home should be your sanctuary. Your home should be that safe place that you go to, not only for yourself, but for your wife and for your kids. It's important because we know a lot of times kids get bullied at school and they need to come home to feel that safety. So having that strong family unit that you talked about is so important. And I'm glad to hear that you spent more time at home, because I did the same. I did 2 things. I literally just wrote the book and spent more time with my family. I did not take on any more clients myself. And I said, this is a time that I'm actually going to reset and be there for my family and write this book, which is all about family. It's all about how to have that life that every guy wants. And so I'm thankful because it allowed us as a family unit to come together stronger, my wife and I, to have more conversations. Like you said, it's pretty amazing I think sometimes we just overlook that, we talk, but we're not really having conversations, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, and that for me was a big aha moment, because we're actually going back to that moment when we first started dating and we actually started having these conversations that weren't about our kids, that weren't about, all these other things that we get caught up with now. So that's awesome. What are you excited about now? Now that you've gone through this tough time, you're going to make it, you've changed your business approach, you got your kids, you're doing some homeschooling. What are you excited about going forward?
Dude, so much, man. It's funny because I had exactly.
He's expecting a big answer on this one.
It's hard to zero it in, right? Because I feel like I said, I got my whole vision board. This is what I do. I have a vision board right here above my computer, and it's this is what I think about. This is what I plan. I'm a visionary. That's the kind of entrepreneur I am. And if there was another awakening that I had in 2020, it was that I'm not as great of a manager as I thought I was. I'm a good manager, but there's so many people who do it better. And the reason I feel this way is because I don't really like to hold. I hate holding people accountable, man.
Just saying that sounded painful.
Yeah, because Purdeep, I want to know what your goals are. I want to know what your goals are, or where you're going in life, and how I can help you get there, right? But if you show up 20 minutes late to work, and I have to have you come into my office, and then we got to sit down and talk about why you're consistently late, and I got to do a write up, and dude, that stuff drains me. I can't do it. Like I can't do it. And like, I just hate doing it. It's the part, you know, and so the thing that I've learned is like, man, I really need to do a better job of surrounding myself with the integrators and the executors to go out and do that part of it for me. Because I feel like I've just grown tremendously as an entrepreneur. And if I want to accomplish the things that are on this board right here, that I'm going to have to build these teams that are going to take on that responsibility. And so for me, like that is like looking to the future, man. It's like, okay, like this business back here, what is the vision for this business? Where is it going? But specifically, how can it go there without me having to be the primary operator?
You know,
right?
Yeah, I'm going to just jump in there because what you said just rings such an awesome point there, because you talked about yourself, right? You talked about the growth that you had as a man, as a person, as a
100%.
leader. I think that is such an important point there because, you know, regardless of whether our businesses succeed or grow or we find new opportunities, it's who we become that matter the most. And that's what I saw in you was that fire from, okay, you learned something new, you became better, you had this aha moment, whether it was an epiphany or whatever it is, to help you move forward in your vision. Rather
so
than
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
All right. Let me throw it back your way a little bit. What's you know, why is it, and I feel like it's probably more like this with men, right? Why aren't we just more open about our, you know, our weaknesses, right? Like here I am, like I'm perfectly fine with saying, you know, I'm a good manager, but I'm not great. And there's definitely people out there that can do it a lot better. Right.
Yeah.
But so many people, like they don't want to be transparent about, you know, their weaknesses or their flaws. Like one, why are we all like that? Two, what can we do about it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think the first one is it's primarily it's a lot more prevalent in guys. And it's a lot more prevalent in guys because we are always about status, and we are status about how we compare ourselves to other guys. There's actually there's an evolutionary reason for that, because if we're less on the totem pole as guys, we get less sex, right? We get less hierarchy, which could be less food, less chances of our genes passing on, which basically means we're not going to survive as well as some other guy that has higher status. So anytime that we say, I need help, or maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was, in our own minds, it tells us we're less than the other guy. And so forget about saying it openly. A lot of us don't even tell ourselves that.
Yeah.
We don't want to admit that to ourselves because it opens up that feeling, which every person has. Collin and I had this as well, you know, especially when I came out of the corporate world. I came out of the corporate world on a high, and I chose to leave myself and start my own consulting and coaching firm. But when I came out of there, I was on a low because I was like, now I'm a nobody. Like now I'm starting from scratch again. And it took me a while to get over that. But as guys, it's inherently built into us to feel that way, to ignore it. But the faster we do this, the faster we acknowledge our challenges and even weaknesses, right? Because I don't want to, you know, sugarcoat it. A lot of us sometimes we just have weaknesses. We need to find those out sooner. The faster we can adapt, the more likely we will actually achieve success. So it's a really good question. I think, Collin, that's the purpose of this show too, is so that we can openly share these challenges, because there's a lot of guys out there that are feeling this, but they just don't know where to go, or they just don't know who to talk to. And we are having this conversation, we are in a way, in an essence, giving them permission to say, it's okay. It's okay to feel that way. As a guy, there's times where I was just like, you know, crap. Like, you know, when I first started my business, I'm like, you know, the lifestyle that we had created for our family, all these kinds of things, you know, people are looking at me like, Purdeep, you just threw away your entire, you know, 14 years of the corporate world, climbing the corporate ladder away. You know, what did you do? My parents looked at me that way. Other people looked at me that way. And it impacted me as a man, right? My self-confidence, my self-esteem. But for us, it's important to have these conversations because we will move past it. We become stronger. So thank you. That was a really good question.
You know, and on that note real quick,
yeah.
like it made me think, I think it's also really, really important, for anybody who's listening to not be isolated. Right. The problem with the pandemic and something like this is that we get locked in our homes. We get locked away from others. We're not allowed to be around other people. We can't meet face to face. We can't have our coffee meetings that we were having. It's just like you start to become isolated, and then like really the demons inside really start to grab hold of that. Right. It's like you start to believe, and you start to focus only on those weaknesses. Yeah. Because that's our tendency inside, right? And instead, and a lot of that's because we're not getting like the meetings, the face-to-face, where if I have other people, like I got a lot of great friends in my life. When I meet with them, they're like, dude, snap out. What are you doing? Do you know what your strengths are? Do you know, like, this is what I see in you. This is what I believe, this is where I see you going. And having those people are so important. So I think it's just, it's incredibly important just to reach out when you need the help, when you need that uplifting person in your life, and then we need to try to be as aware of it and others as possible and make the attempts to reach out. I've done more just one-to-one messages and just trying to send little video, voice recordings to people or face videos, just trying to, uplift people during this time. Cause I just know a lot of people are struggling right now. And so I would just say, reach out, don't be isolated.
Oh, I think that's awesome. And again, you just nailed it. There's two things that stood out for me. One is it's our responsibility as men to reach out to other people. It's that we are leaders. We were born to be, we were raised to be leaders. That's the most important thing. We saw this with COVID. A lot of guys went into contraction mode, which I call, let's hoard, let's, bunker down. And then there were guys that were helping other people saying, okay, what does my neighbor need? What does my aunt, my elderly aunt need? That's what we need to do, because if we did more of that, we'd get through this a lot faster. We will get through this a lot faster. I think there's still ability for us to do this, but more importantly, what you talked about was reaching out to other people. The people around us really determine our level of, sanity is one thing. Our level of success is another, because once we're by ourselves, and the term idiot, for example, actually stems from, it's an ancient term, which was stemmed from someone living by themselves, someone self-isolating themselves. So if you think about it, and the reason is because when we become self-isolated, all of that negative self-talk, as you mentioned, gets to us, right? Even to the best of us, when we're by ourselves, we look at our flaws and we say, okay, what's wrong with me? Maybe I'm screwed up, or, maybe I don't deserve to have this, right? Maybe there's something that I did. There's a reason for it. Maybe God is paying me back in some way, shape, or form. All of that negative self-talk will get to us, and we need healthy people around us. And that's why I'm a firm believer, personally, Collin, that, and this was another big thing that I did in my life. I said, I just don't have room for negative people anymore. I just don't have, I'll be there for them to support them. I will reach out, but I'm not going to give them any more energy or allow them to draw any more of my positive energy than I need to. And I think I made some big decisions in my life to say, just some people, I'll be, I love them, I'll be there, but I just don't need to hang around with them all the time.
Yeah. All right, sorry. Let me show you something really, really quick, because I go right in line with what you're talking about. So our buddy put out this Innovate Gainesville book.
Oh, okay. Cool. That's like a cool book.
So Pablo Casalinas, right? And this is the thought leader part in it from me. And if you see it, like, I don't know if you see it, but it says, I realized I needed to audit who I was spending my time with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, dude,
I like that.
Like it's a little article that I wrote about, like, surrounding yourself with the right people. Mm-hmm. John Spence, who is a local speaker, and a lot of other speakers say this as well, man. It's like you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't those people be way up here?
Yeah.
Like you need to audit your circle. So I think it's just right in line with what you're saying. I just thought it was funny that like I literally was just talking about the same thing.
That's sweet. I love it.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
All right. So we're talking a lot about things that define character, right? And so what was the lowest moment of your life? And now looking back, how has it defined who you've become?
The lowest moment of my life was probably, I think when I got out of my last relationship. So I was with my high school sweetheart for about 8 or 9 years. When I got out of that relationship, like I had been with her since high school, and I was a very committed guy. I was just with one girl at that time. When I got out, when I just shouldn't say got out, when we split, there's a part of me that just I kind of changed, and I went on this streak, you can say, of dating a lot of women, and I was just never fulfilled. And I would date one woman after another woman. I dated a lot of women, and for the typical guy, like all my buddies were like, "Man, that's awesome, man. You're going out and you're getting girls all the time." But inside, I just wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't happy with myself. I wasn't happy with who I was being. It was just. How do I put it? I felt icky, man. I just felt gross. I just felt like a slime ball, because I was used to being in one relationship with one woman, and it just wasn't going that way. But that taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about having self-respect. It taught me a lot about relationships. It taught me a lot about what I was looking for in a partner. It taught me a lot about, my faults and my flaws in a partner. It also taught me how I think society has really, unfortunately, turned a marriage or relationships into this thing that is just, you can hop into one relationship and hop into another, and it's not taken seriously. So it really changed my character, and from the perspective of I had a lot of maturing or growing up to do, and I came out of that period. It was 4 years of my life where I just came out, and part of the growing up was actually I moved across the country. I was headhunted. I was approached by a company that said, "Hey, look, we need your expertise." And I had to move 5 provinces over in a place where I had nobody, no family, no friends, no ties, no nothing really, which was probably the best thing that happened to me, because I broke all association with all of that stuff that I was tied to, the partying, the drinking, all that kind of stuff. And so that was probably the moment for me that I would say I grew up, and I learned a lot, and I just changed into a different person.
Dang, that's good.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. It just took me back now. I'm like, holy crap. Like you said, you look back and you say, I've grown from that. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. If you could leave the audience with one thing, what would you leave them with?
Dang, man, that's a big overarching question.
I know. Let me narrow it down here.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, as a family guy, what is the one thing that you think that guy should keep at the forefront?
Okay. Whatever's happening in your business right now, it's not as important as you think it is. So whatever it's like, if you're failing, if you're struggling, if you're, like whatever, because that's the scenario, right? Like there's some businesses that are absolutely killing it, but for the majority of people, they're struggling somewhere in their life because of 2020. And a lot of us as businessmen, it's usually in our jobs or, in our businesses. Like I'm an entrepreneur, definitely have had a tough year, but again, having that perspective of, at the end of the day, it's not that important. Like you're going to look back and you'll laugh. Like you'll laugh, like 10 years from now, you'll laugh at how upset and worried you got about that thing in 2020. Right. So, I would say for me, God first, family second, business third.
Awesome.
Line up your priorities exactly like that and you'll be set.
Thank you so much. That's been awesome. Great words of advice. I think every guy out there should listen to that. So thank you, Collin. I appreciate your time. I hope you have a rocking day, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Yes, sir. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So guys out there, you know what? I love what Collin kind of ended up with. And those are just words of wisdom right there. You know, whatever is happening in your business is going to happen in your business. You will get through this. The best part about that, what he said, and it's true, you will look back 10 years from now and laugh and say, I got through that. You know, this is the man I became. So just awesome wisdom and value from an entrepreneur, a father, a husband that's been there, that's done that. So I want to thank him for being on the show again. And just to close it off again, if you haven't gotten your copy of the Complete Man book, please go to completemanbook.com. I appreciate your support. If you can leave a review, but most importantly, I ask that as you read the book, as something stands out for you, please let me know. This is what drives me. This is what gets me going. When you say, hey, in chapter 3, this has changed my outlook on my business or my relationship or my life or my performance, please, I need to know that personally, because that's what keeps me going. So I really appreciate it. I thank you for watching this show. I hope you can tune in next Thursday at 8 a.m. on LinkedIn or YouTube if you want to follow us on YouTube. But again, the next show we're hoping is going to drive even more value for you, for the guys out there. Remember, it's all about experiencing complete victory. Have an awesome day, guys.